Alright guys, so today I'm going to show you an absolutely mind-blowing card trick that gets incredible reactions, and I guarantee that. So without further ado, let's get right into the performance. So let's imagine that I've borrowed a deck of cards from a spectator, and they can actually go ahead and shuffle the cards before we begin because this is a genuinely impromptu card trick. But I would hope that whatever deck I'm using contains, yes, the two jokers, perfect, because I would love to be able to use these cards in this trick, because this trick is actually a sandwich card trick. I would ask my spectator if they know what that is. Most of the time, they probably wouldn't if they're not a magician, so I would probably explain to them the basic premise of a sandwich trick. So a sandwich trick is a very classic type of card trick that magicians tend to do a lot. It involves using any pair of cards. In this case, we'll use the two jokers, but let's say, in a basic version of a trick, the spectator would choose a card. Let's use the Queen of Diamonds. And then somehow, the result of the trick would end with your card being sandwiched in between the two jokers, just like this. And that would be the end of the trick. Now, of course, there's, thousands and thousands and thousands of different versions of the sandwich card trick plot. And in my opinion, a lot of them are kind of unusable because they're very, very sleight of hand heavy, and they're just very overcomplicated. And I don't think that any of them really look as fair as they should. So I kind of wanted to create a new version of this sandwich trick. And this is my version of it, which I think is the most fair and most simple way to do it. Imagine it involves no sleight of hand. I would just leave the cards on the table. The jokers are here in full view the entire time. I would have you name any card of your choice, and then I would just snap my fingers and your card appears in between the two jokers. Now, in my opinion, I think that would be the best possible version of the sandwich card trick. Wouldn't you agree? So, okay, we can go ahead and give it a shot. I'm still kind of working on it. I'm not sure if it'll, succeed, but I would love to try it out with you if you're willing to give it a shot. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and have you generate any card. This will be a completely free choice. Let's just pretend that we have an invisible deck of cards here, and we will use this to sort of generate a playing card. So in this invisible box of cards, we can split this into two categories of number cards and picture cards. So whichever one you name, we'll go ahead and remove those. So let's say they name numbers. So let's go ahead and remove those cards from the box, leaving us with the picture cards, right? So the jacks, the queens, and the kings. Out of those three, just go ahead and name one. Let's say they say kings. So in the kings, we have the red kings and the black kings. If I were to hand you one of these pairs, which would you like to hold on to? Let's say they want to hold on to the red kings. Okay, so here, take the red kings, the king of hearts and the king of diamonds, and just pretend like you're mixing them back and forth in your hands. But not only in your hands, do this as well in your mind. Flip back and forth between hearts and diamonds, hearts, diamonds, hearts, diamonds, and do this until you settle on one final suit, okay? Now, you can agree that was a completely random choice, so you've stopped now, right? So if you were now to change your mind one final time, what would you now be on? And they tell me diamonds. And you can agree that neither of us could have possibly predicted that diamonds would have been the suit that we ended up on, right? There's just no possible way. But I think it was the king, right? King of diamonds. Okay, so that was your freely generated card. You can agree that was a free choice, right? You can change the card if you like. No? Okay, you want to stick with it? So, okay, the goal of this trick is now to get the king of diamonds in between the two jokers with no sleight of hand. And in order to do no sleight of hand, I actually can't touch the cards at all. So I would actually invite the spectator to please gather up the cards, just like this. So the spectator squares up the cards, and all it takes is a snap. I ask the spectator to one more time spread the cards slowly on the table. And look at that. They now notice that there is actually a playing card in between the two jokers. Wouldn't it be impossible if it was the king of diamonds, your freely thought of card? Yeah, in my opinion, that's the best possible version of the sandwich card trick. And if you guys would love to learn how this is done, be sure to stick around for the tutorial. Alright guys, so here's the tutorial for the trick that you just saw. So this is absolutely my favorite version of any type of sandwich card trick because it really is the most fair possible version of this trick. Seemingly no sleight of hand. There is obviously some sleight of hand in the beginning, but it truly goes unnoticed because it all happens before the trick technically even begins. So this tutorial will be split into two separate halves. The first half will be the basic sleight of hand in the beginning and how it works, and the second half will be the script and the equivoque or equivoque that you will have to perform in order to let the spectator freely select any card that they would like, seemingly. So let's get into the sleight of hand portion first. So in order to begin this trick, you genuinely don't need any setup whatsoever. You really can do this with any deck of cards, and this can also be a borrowed deck of cards. The only thing is you would want there to be jokers, so if you are doing this with your own deck of cards, you just take the jokers, put them in the deck anywhere, and there you go. That's your setup, I guess you could say, even though it's not really a setup. You can have the spectator shuffle the cards, and you actually do want them to shuffle the cards in the beginning because then it gives you an excuse to then take the cards back and find and remove the jokers. And you are going to be doing this for a reason. In this case, I'm gonna just pretend like this is the same performance that I did, so I'm gonna be using the King of Diamonds as the force card. So essentially what I'm gonna be doing is finding the jokers, but I'm also going to be finding the King of Diamonds at the same time. I'm looking for the King of Diamonds, but I'm also looking for the jokers. And when I see the King of Diamonds, all I'm gonna do is just hold my finger on it. If I knew how to cull the cards, I could cull the card up like this in the back, but honestly, you don't actually have to cull the card. You could just hold your finger directly in the back. Like I just put my middle finger right in the back, and then I just kind of keep my index finger on that card as I continue to spread. And then I just drop the first joker that I see and then the second joker, just like this. And then I can spread through the rest of the deck. And at this point, all I have to do is split the deck at my finger break right here. And I just kind of cut the cards very naturally. And what that will do is it will put my force card to the top, and then I put this down. The next part of the trick is only necessary if you're performing for a layperson. In other words, somebody who is not a magician. So if you're performing for a magician, you don't have to do this next part of explaining a sandwich trick. But if you are performing for someone who is not a magician, I would recommend to do this part because it definitely helps to add context, and I think it makes the effect a lot stronger. So all you're going to do is just reach into the middle, pull out any card, and then place it in between the jokers and just sort of explain the basic premise of a sandwich trick where your selection will eventually end up in between the jokers. Then you're going to take this card and just lose it back in the deck, take the jokers and show them to the spectator like this, and you're going to basically use them to cover the front edge of the deck, and you're going to use this cover in order to push off the top card, pull back, and catch a pinky break on the top card. So I'm going to do that as I use these cards to cover. And then what I'm going to do is take the two jokers, place them on top of the deck, on top of my break, and then pick up the three cards from the break. So I'm now holding the three cards right over here, squared up in biddle grip. I'm going to peel off the first joker on top of the deck with my thumb, like so. And then I'm going to take the double that's left in my hands and place it on top of my fingers here, out jogged to the side, just a little bit. Grip the deck in biddle grip with my hands, and at the same time I'm actually going to slide the top joker over to the left, and my fingers that are on the edge of the deck will maintain that second card out jogged to the side like this, but my hand in biddle grip is completely covering that card being exposed from the edge. And now all I'm going to do is riffle with my thumb about half of the cards like this. Once I get about half, I'm simply going to undercut those to the top of the deck like this, and then I'm gonna use the edge to square up the cards the best that I can. And I'm now in this position here where I have the King of Diamonds sandwiched in between the jokers, but it is now out jogged. And all I have to do now is what's called the side angle jog concealment. In other words, I simply have to spread the deck from left to right, and this card will automatically be hidden underneath the spread. So if I were to spread the cards now from left to right, you can clearly see that that card is not visible in between the jokers. I absolutely love this move. I use it all the time in many of my different tricks because it truly allows for a hands-off revelation in the end of this trick. And also the time misdirection of you leaving this on the table for like 2 to 3 minutes while you're talking and then having the spectator do everything, it makes it even stronger. And once you're in this position, the trick is essentially over. So you will basically force the King of Diamonds, which I will explain in just a little bit. Once you force the card, you are going to have the spectator square up the cards, and then you snap and you have them spread again. And just like real magic, the trick is over and they can examine everything. And that is the end of the trick. So that is essentially the sleight of hand portion of the tutorial. But now I will go into the actual meat of the tutorial, which is how to force a certain card on the spectator. Okay, so since this next part of the tutorial is all about your dialogue and pattern and how you're talking to the spectator, I'm just going to be using these cards as a visual aid so you guys can actually watch the video and understand what I'm talking about. But of course, this entire part happens when the deck is just spread on the table and there are no actual cards in play. This is all just through your words. But essentially, what's going to be happening is you are going to choose any picture card. And this can be a genuinely free choice of yours before the trick begins, but choose any picture card that you want to be the target card, and that will be your force card. So I'll use a different card than the King of Diamonds in this tutorial's sake. In this case, let's use the Queen of Spades as our new target card. In the beginning part of the trick, when I'm looking for the jokers, I would control the Queen of Spades to the top of the deck and load it in between the jokers. So this will now be the card that I have to force on the spectator because this is going to be the out. But you guys can truly choose any of these 12 cards to force. It's completely up to you. And I will teach you guys the ways in which to force any of these cards on the spectator. So there's basically 4 different sections of this equivoque here. The first section will be numbers or pictures. The second section will be jacks, queens, kings. The third section will be the reds and the blacks. And then the final section will be between the last 2 suits. And there's 4 pieces of key language that you will have to sort of associate with these 4 sections. So the first section, the language we're going to use is the word remove. For the second section, we're going to use the words name one. The third section, we're going to use the words which pair do you want to hold on to. And then the last section is a separate force where you're having them switch between the 2 options in their mind. Back and forth. So all you have to do is really just associate those 4 key moments in those 4 different sections. And if you can sort of memorize that pattern, then the script will be pretty easy to follow. So the first section between numbers and pictures is the easiest to do. You basically begin by having the idea of an invisible deck of cards inside of the box, and you tell the spectators that we have 2 categories of numbers and pictures, and whichever one they name, we will remove. And you have to use that word remove because this leaves what follows to be ambiguous. They can name numbers, and if they name numbers, then you tell them, okay, we'll remove those cards from the box, leaving us with the picture cards. And there you go. Now you've forced picture cards on the spectator. But if they were to name pictures, then you tell them, okay, great. So we'll get out the picture cards from the box, and we have now the jacks, queens, and kings, and you just proceed as follows. That is the easiest part of this force is no matter if they name numbers or pictures, you will be left on pictures. Let's move on to section number 2, which is having them choose the jacks, queens, or kings. So in this case, let's remember our target card for this tutorial. In this case, we'll use the Queen of Spades. I'm asking them to name a random one, and I'm hoping that they will just name my target value. There's 3 different possibilities that can happen. The first possibility is they will name the target value, in which case you actually don't have to do anything more. You'll just proceed to the next section. But the other 2 possibilities are if they name ones that are not your target value. So I'll run through some examples. I tell the spectator we have jacks, queens, and kings. Go ahead and just name one for me. They'll tell me kings. If they tell me one that is not my target value, I will instantly say, and name another. So one of the outcomes is if they name kings, and then I ask them to name another one, and then they name my target value of queens. Now, I would ask them to pretend like they have both of these values in their hands, kings and queens, and I would now ask them to just hand me one back. And it doesn't matter which one they say. If they hand me back the kings, they'll be left with the target. And if they hand me the target, then I'll say, great, we'll use the target. So as you can see, it doesn't matter which outcome happens, you'll be left with the target. And the final outcome is if they name the 2 values that are not the target. So I ask them to name one, kings, name another, jacks, and that leaves your target. So then take the target. So as you can see, that would be the final outcome. So moving on to section number 3, let's say we've eliminated these, right? So now we're left with the queens. We're now going to split these into 2 pairs of black queens and red queens. The third section requires you to ask this question. If I were to now hand you one of these pairs, which pair would you like to hold on to? And this is also a very ambiguous, open-ended question. Essentially, you're hoping that they say black, because then you can hand them the black cards and then they'll mix them. But of course, if they name red, then you tell them, okay, great, so hold on to these, and that leaves me with the black queens, which I will mix back and forth. So as you can see, no matter what they say, I will be left with my target. So if they name black queens, then I say, great, take these, hold on to them, and start mixing them in your hands back and forth like this. So they would pretend to do this with their invisible cards, and then I tell them to also do this in their mind and flip back and forth between clubs and spades. So they're going to do this in their head: clubs, spades, clubs, spades, clubs, spades, and they have a completely free choice to end on either one. You're going to ask this question, and this is a very, very, very clever little force where you ask them, now, if you had to change your mind one final time, what suit would you now be on? So if they ended on clubs, they would have to say the opposite of spades, because that would be changing their mind one more time. So if they name the target, then you proceed as follows, and you say, and you can agree that there's no possible way that I could have predicted that spades would be the suit that we ended up with, right? That's impossible. But let's say you ask the question and this is the outcome. So if you had to change your mind one more time, what would you now be on? Clubs. But you didn't change your mind, right? You ended on spades, and you can agree that that was a completely free choice, and there's no way I could have predicted that spades would have been your final choice. So as you can see, once again, it doesn't matter which one they choose, you'll always be left with your target card. And that is a basic version of the equivoque. So let's just go ahead and use another target card just so that I can be as clear as possible. In this case, let's do a jack. We'll do the jack of hearts will be our target card, okay? So let's run through the entire script again, starting from the beginning. So in this invisible box of cards, I have numbers and pictures. Whichever one you name, I'll go ahead and remove. Pictures, okay, great, let's get out the pictures. So we have the jacks, queens, and kings. Go ahead and name one for me. Queens, and name another. Jacks, okay, so out of those two, go ahead and hand me one. Let's say they do jacks. Okay, great. So in the jacks, we have the red jacks and the black jacks. If I were to give you one of these pairs, which pair would you like to hold on to? The red ones? Okay, great. So take the red pair and mix the hearts and the diamonds in your hands back and forth like this, and also do this in your mind as well. So mix between hearts and diamonds until you settle on just one. Now, if you had to change your mind one final time, what would you now be on? Diamonds? But you didn't. You settled on hearts, right? And there's no possible way that I could have known that hearts would be the final choice that you ended up on. But jack of hearts, that is the target card. And that is how to force a picture card on the spectator. So you guys can choose any of these 12 cards. It really works with any of these cards. All you have to do is adapt your script in order to accommodate for any of these cards. You can honestly just choose one of these cards and just practice with it so that you know every single outcome for that particular card, and then you'll be extra prepared for this trick. But then yeah, the trick is, as follows. The spectator squares up the deck and then snap your fingers, and whatever card it was, the jack of hearts in this case, will be genuinely in between the two jokers, and that will be the end of the trick. So incredibly strong, incredibly powerful. In essence, it is simple, but of course you will have to practice and get it down and sort of memorize the script a little bit. But once you guys do that, it's pretty simple to perform, and the reactions you will get will 100% be worth the time you put into learning this trick. So yeah, I would highly recommend trying this one out, and please let me know how it goes in the comments below. I'd love to hear stories of how this goes. So yeah, anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this trick, and see you guys for the next one. Bye.